Okay, so we're gonna try this. I saw this come up, recommended to me by YouTube the other day. Does physicalism or idealism best explain reality? A debate between Dr. Graham Oppy and Dr. Bernardo Kastrup. I can't talk. I've seen this before. This was coming from here. Let me just. This is what we're gonna be talking about, but I'll till we get ready. This is what I'm gonna be doing. Okay, so I've seen this before. I think this came out in December of 2021, is what it says right there on the YouTube page. So that was 2 years ago. Since it's January of 2024, just over 2 years ago. What a different world it was back then. 2 years ago, lots different. But so this is from the Digital Gnosis channel. It's a channel that I watch sometimes. I've seen this debate before, but it's been a while since I watched it. I think maybe I was watching this. Is this before or after I had a discussion with Bernardo on Consciousness Live? I don't remember. Anyway, I've definitely seen it and enjoyed it, but I figured I'd watch it and talk about it. I've never met Graham Oppy before, but I'm familiar with his work from Philosophy of Religion. So I guess what I'll try to do is start with looking at the opening statements, and then we'll kind of go from there. So someone said I should make the thing I'm watching bigger. I was doing that before, and then I switched to making me bigger. So I'm gonna see maybe if I can switch back and forth or something like that. We'll see. So this is Nathan, the Digital Gnosis guy. This is Graham Oppy and Bernardo Kastrup here. So I guess before I start this, I probably people who are watching this already maybe know, but in case you don't, I've talked to Bernardo before. I'm friendly to idealism. I'm friendly to physicalism. I'm most friendly to the identity theory, the mind-brain identity theory. So I think that if you were looking to go beyond physicalism, then idealism is a serious, especially the kind championed by people like Bernardo, objective idealism. It's a serious contender. My skepticisms and problems have always kind of revolved around the first step, which is why we should reject physicalism. So I usually get hung up arguing with people over whether we really have strong enough reason to reject physicalism. I don't think so. I think we have reason to be skeptical and to be suspicious and to wonder about various things, but not to reject and know it's false or anything like that. But anyway, okay, so let's jump right into this. I'm trying to aim to make these things a little bit shorter. I was going up to 45 hours, sometimes longer. I'm trying to keep them 15, 20 minutes, little chunks. See if that works, of course. If it doesn't work, I'll switch back to just sitting through the whole thing. But here I go to shrink down. Is this a good size? I don't know. Let's go ahead and start. I fast forwarded through all the kind of intro stuff, and I think I'm going to start with Oppy's opening remarks.
The label, the naturalism versus physicalism, I think of my view as supposing that there's a natural reality which is constituted out of natural stuff. The natural stuff includes, the natural, the category includes the physical, but I think that it includes more. It includes the chemical, biological, the psychological, and so on. The foundation for the view is going to be where I think the sources of knowledge is across all of the sciences, including the social sciences and the humanities. So I don't think that there's anything like a reduction to physics that you could describe all of reality in the terms of physics. That's why I don't want to call myself a physicalist.
But what would be the key? What would be the key difference in terms of how you're understanding idealism between your view and like an idealist position then?
Okay, so for idealists...
Well, before we even get to the idealism stuff, just about the naturalism, I think what he's saying, if I understood his view, is that he doesn't think there's a reduction from, so he's a non-reductive physicalist maybe. But I thought he was an identity theorist, so I think maybe what he means by non-reductive identity, or what he means by no reduction, is that these identities are going to be brute. They're not going to be explainable in terms of the theoretical properties. They're going to be postulated, perhaps, or something. So we'll see where he goes with this. But I think naturalism, in his way of talking, is just a general term for saying that these things are physical, but there's no reduction. Someone was asking me in one of the comments on a different video about naturalism and physicalism, I think. And these words get used in a lot of different ways. So I was saying naturalism has more to do with whether you endorse something supernatural, or whether you think that there's going to be kind of law-like explanations of things. So even people like Chalmers could be a naturalist in that sense, people who are not physicalists. So I think there's room for debate about how to use these terms. So it's good that he's setting up what he means by that. But what I'm getting from him is that he sounds like he's going to be defending type B physicalism, namely that there's no a priori entailment or reduction from physics to consciousness, but nonetheless that those things are physical.
The way that I understand idealism, what's fundamental is minds and ideas. So that's what lies at the basis of reality. Whereas according to me, minds and ideas are late and local in the history of natural reality. Reality itself is, I can use, I'll say material, but that's how you might have described this kind of view, say in the 17th or 18th century. It's not exactly right given our current understanding about the sort of fundamentals of physics, but that will do.
So do you want to come in on that, Bernardo?
So I guess then the idea is supposed to be that the difference between them is that on the idealist view, minds are fundamental, but on his naturalistic view, minds are not fundamental. Is that basically all he said? They come later.
Would you characterize your own position, and what do you think of Graham's characterizations there?
Well, to me, naturalism, and to most philosophers I know, naturalism is the notion that what exists is natural. So we are only excluding supernaturalism, which basically doesn't exclude any serious person or position engaged in this debate. So for me, naturalism...
I mean, that's sort of just what I was saying. It's like if even David Chalmers can say he's a naturalist and endorsed dualism as various non-physicalist views of various sorts, then it does seem like, the term needs to be defined more clearly.
It's the idea that nature unfolds spontaneously according to the patterns and regularities we call the laws of physics, and that there isn't a anthropomorphic entity that interferes in the normal, ordinary unfolding of nature on a whim, in a deliberate way, that nature unfolds spontaneously according to its own patterns and regularities. So from this perspective, I'm absolutely a naturalist. I'm not a supernaturalist at all. To me, the difference between what we might call mainstream physicalism and analytic idealism, there are many forms of physicalism, some of which don't really deserve the term physicalism because they have become so abstract that there is nothing physical left in the reduction base. So mainstream physicalism is the notion that at the bottom level of reality, there are physical entities, be them elementary subatomic particles or abstract fields, and that mind somehow emerges out of particular arrangements of physical entities as a byproduct thereof. Analytic idealism states that at the bottom level of reality, there is a field of subjectivity, of simple subjectivity, and excitations of this field are what we call experiences, and that's the bottom level of reality. What we colloquially call the material world, which the idealist will not deny. But for the idealists, the material world is what transpersonal mental processes look like when observed from our perspective, or technically when observed from across a dissociative boundary. So the physical is an appearance, an image. It is not the thing in itself. The physical does not have standalone reality. It's the way something else, which does have standalone reality, look like from our perspective. That's the difference. Now, the commonalities is that both analytic idealism and physicalism acknowledge that there is an external world outside our individual minds, a world that is objective from our perspective and does what it does regardless of whether we like it or not, whether we fantasize that it be different or not. That's a common point. Another common point is that both analytic idealism and physicalism acknowledge that the qualities on the screen of perception are representations. They are not the world as it is in itself. They are our own cognitive representations thereof. These are the main two.
Yeah, there's a lot that's going on in here, but I've heard him say this stuff before, and this is a good synopsis of his view. Notice there is a lot in common. This is one of the things that I pressed him on. A lot in common with the physicalist. The only difference is that the physicalist wants to say the external world is made up of things which are not themselves mental, and the idealist wants to say those things are in fact mental. So one question is, what reason is there for thinking that those things out there are mental? And that's going to come up, obviously. But to me, that's the big question that we would like to ask is, what reason do we have for thinking those things are mental? Whether idealism counts as a kind of naturalism, in the sense we were talking about before, that there's nothing supernatural. I mean, I'm happy calling it a naturalistic type of view. I think many people would find that a bit odd, and even odd to think of David Chalmers as having a view that you could call naturalism. And I think that they would think it's odd because naturalism is usually assumed to be like, governed by laws of physics or something like that. Those are the natural things. And if maybe just not even laws of physics, but scientific laws or something like that. And that's why Chalmers wants to invoke psychophysical laws, and idealists invoke something similar, involving the world unfolding according to its own nature or will or something like that. So it's it's interesting. Now, this business about the screen of perception, I think this really hides something that maybe people have picked up on before. I don't know, but there's the idea that we perceive representations, not the external world. Many philosophers think we perceive the external world by having representations. So the way in which we are in direct contact with the external world is by representing it in such a way. My senses are in direct contact with the world, so one might think. And I mean, to use one of Bernardo's own metaphors, if you imagine a plane that's flying on autopilot with its sensors, and the sensors are providing information that allows the autopilot to fly the plane, then the sensors are in fact in contact with the external world. Now, if there were someone in there looking at the sensors, or if the system itself were trying to use the information embodied in the sensors to build an external model of what was happening in the world, then that would be roughly analogous to what modern theories of perception often postulate, which is not to say that there's some kind of screen between me and the external world. It's to say that through interacting with the external world, I come to model it.
Points of commonality, I think.
Yeah.
I am not ready to give up on the word naturalism as a synonym to physicalism. I don't think this makes any sense. It's gratuitously misleading. I think it's a rhetorical move, because it allows Professor Oppy to basically classify everything that isn't physicalism as supernatural, with all the wrong evocations that this word brings to the table. So I'm not going to surrender the view that idealism is a naturalist approach. Naturalism is a scientific outlook. Physicalism is a metaphysical position regarding the philosophy of mind. These two things are certainly not equivalent.
Yeah, that's not the way most people use naturalism, as just meaning like a scientific outlook. That would be like maybe empiricism. Experience or experimenting is the best way to know about the world. And empiricism and naturalism are often, those are also ones that get joined together. Anyway, so I don't much care about these terminological debates. If someone wants to call their view naturalistic, then that's fine with me. And if what they mean is that there's no supernatural thing, or that things are law governed, or that we're taking a scientific approach, then I don't think there's much reason to argue about that, to be honest. But I do think it would strike many people as odd to think of these views as naturalistic. Not to say that physicalism is the only view that counts as naturalistic. Yeah, not to say that, but it does seem like you should say that.
No, I don't want to guide the conversation too much if there's something you immediately want to come back on there, Graham, that you think would be useful, but otherwise I can.
So, and there are a few things in that characterization that I disagree with. So, one thing.
Well, first, okay, so maybe this is a good place to stop and take a quick break before we do the next part, since I'm trying to keep these a little shorter. This is a good breaking spot.